Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me first thank Father John and Father Michael for hosting us here today. I'll share with you. I don't think you'll mind something that Father John said. As I came in and they greeted me, and that is he wished I was not here today. And I certainly wish I was not here today. And I know you wish you were not here. Today either. So today, as we meet to discuss the possibility of welcoming to Ohio refugees from Ukraine. Putin continues his barbaric, brutal, savage, and unjustified war. Each day when we get up, or each day when we turn on the TV, the tragedy of Ukraine seems to get worse. This is a tragedy, and this is a war against the people of Ukraine. We see in the news reports civilians killed, seemingly targeted, children dying, bodies of children. It is just so horrible and so barbaric. It literally breaks our heart. I think we all can join in urging our president to everything that he can to send any kind of help that we can send, including fighter jets, and anything else, so that the people, the brave, unbelievably brave people of Ukraine fight back. And fight back they have. We have in this country a long tradition of helping refugees. And our meeting today is early. We don't know how many refugees will be coming here, or even if we will have refugees. But it seemed that we need to get ready. And we continue to get many inquiries in the governor's office about it. So we thought that this was an appropriate time, an appropriate place to begin the process. We have a long history in this country. We have a long history in Ohio of reaching out to refugees, reaching out to people who want to come here. We are a compassionate people, and that's been very evenant by the calls that we have received. You know, the mayor told me he's been receiving calls, some money coming in, just people who want to try in some way to help. We have a significant Ukrainian population in Ohio. And we are very, very proud of that fact. When the federal government resettles refugees, one of the things that they look at is where there's a population that is welcoming, but also a population of people who come from that country. So we would expect that when the federal government gets to the point that we have refugees here, resettlement, that Ohio will be one of the states, certainly the federal government will be looking to. And so let me make it very, very clear to everyone: Ohio welcomes and will welcome any refugees who come from Ukraine. We are a welcoming state. We're a welcoming people. We're a nation of immigrants. We are a state that was built by immigrants. Let me just say we will hear from a number of people today who are going to tell us how this process works, people who've experienced it themselves. Let me start off by welcoming another host, and thanking another host, Harmon Mayor Tim Jeter, as well as Tallahassee County Executive Army Bootish. I see Armin there. I saw the mayor actually a few minutes ago. I also want to personally say I appreciate what Marta Kelleher has done, president of the United Ukrainian organization here in Ohio. I also want to thank Karen Kandinsky, someone who I've known for many years, going back to George Voinovich administration. She is now the district director for Senator Rob Portman. I understand that both of them will be speaking later this afternoon. They have returned from a trip to the Ukrainian-Polish border, and along with Senator Portman. So we look forward to hearing from them. We're gathered because we are concerned about the people of Ukraine. We're concerned about the families who have been forced out of their homes, neighborhoods, their country because of this barbaric war. We've seen night after night, morning after morning, heart-wrenching images of families, women and children huddled together in basements, sheltering from bombs. Citizens of all ages standing as patriots with Ukrainian President Zelensky to defend their nation, to defend their freedom. We are moved by their bravery. We've shown our solidarity with the people of Ukraine by displaying their flags, lighting landmarks, like Voinovich Bridge, yellow and blue, holding days of prayer. And we wish there was more, frankly, that we could do. We have taken action as a state as well. I've directed state funds, different pension funds that we have in the state of Ohio to divest their investments in Russian assets, and we have banned contracts with Russian businesses or services. We're not against the drinking of liquor, but we have banned Russian vodka from our state stores. We've also called law enforcement agencies across the state to take stock of their surplus or expired personal protective gear that could potentially be donated to Ukraine. That's a work in progress. So we're here today to talk about the refugees who may be coming. Refugee services are historically funded through the federal government, but they are run by generally local nonprofits. So we brought together refugees, and immigrant-serving organizations, charities, faith community groups to start talking about and making plans to help. Questions that we'll look at today. What will Ukrainians need if they come to Ohio? What will their experience be like? How can we set these families up so they succeed here? And how can Ohio benefit from having new members of our community? Many questions remain. We don't expect all the answers today, but this is a beginning. So let me now introduce the Director of the Department of Jobs and Family Services, Dan Schroeder, who is doing a phenomenal job. He has many duties. We've asked him to kind of be the MC today as we move through our agenda. So Matt, come on up and look forward to hearing from the different speakers and the people we're going to have on our panels today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Governor, for your leadership and for your instruction to the the state agencies and to the nonprofit resettlement organizations to be prepared and ready to act. And that's what we're here today to do, is to prepare so that we can be the most effective in helping any potential refugees from Ukraine who may come to this great state. Now is the perfect time and the perfect opportunity to bring together the many organizations, as the governor shared, that are involved in this process, so we can all begin to map out what our individuals and collective roles will be in the resettlement of Ukrainian families who may come. To do that, we put together 3 informational sessions, as the governor mentioned, that will include the federal and state perspective on possible Ukrainian resettlement, followed by a panel discussion on how resettlement usually occurs and what we might expect from an influx as a result of the war in Ukraine. And then we will finish with a discussion about the refugee experience here in Ohio. At the end of the planned programming, I would encourage you all to stick around. Part of the benefit of this kind of gathering is the networking and the building of relationships to an exchanging of cards and emails, and so that we can build a strong network across the state to support individuals. You'll see in your folders that you received at the check-in some index cards. Because time this afternoon is short and our gathering is large, we want to make sure that we move as expeditiously as possible through the content, and we know there's going to be lots of questions, and in some cases there won't be answers today, as the governor said. So what we've asked is that you use those index cards in your packet to jot down questions that you have that you would like us to answer, and after the event we will distribute electronically kind of the list of FAQs that are derived from today, and to keep those up to date as we have more information. So no formal question and answers as a part from the audience to the panels today, but please take notes on those cards. At the end of the day, you can either leave it at the table here in the front or in the back as you leave, so that we can collect those and then compile the information and respond. Just a few other housekeeping items to note. Please make sure that your cell phones are turned off or on vibrate, so as to not be a disturbance to those around you or the panelists. The exit, many of you came in through the doors in the front. There's also doors in the back of the room. Also, restrooms are in the lobby through the doors in the back. There's also a great selection of cookies from a local bakery, Rudy's, so please enjoy. There's plenty, at least there were plenty at the beginning. I don't know what's left, but be sure to take some with you if they're in. So to kick off this afternoon, we are pleased to welcome Karen Kandinsky, who's the district director from U.S. Senator Rob Portman's office, who, as Governor DeWine mentioned, was just recently on the ground with the senator at the Poland-Ukrainian border, and so we're very pleased to have you join us today. Please welcome Karen.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Director Dan Schroeder, thank you. Governor DeWine, thank you for your comments and for your commitment to this issue. I agree with our hosts here. I wish we didn't have to gather here today, but it's a wonderful site to see from here. I have to say I'm surprised that Ohio and Greater Cleveland would turn out to lend their assistance and their support and their desire to help our friends and partners in Ukraine. So thank you for being here. As the director and governor mentioned, I was just visiting the Polish-Ukrainian border with my friend Marta Lishanetsky, who heads up the United Ukrainian Organizations of Ohio, along with our friend and fellow Clevelander, Andy Fute, who heads up the United Congressional Committee, Ukrainian Congressional Committee of America, UCCA. We were there and overlapped with Senator Portman's delegation, he and three other U.S. senators. participated in a bipartisan congressional trip to the border as well. So what I'd like to do today is share with you some of the senators' observations and some of what he has called for since returning from Poland, and share some of my personal thoughts as well. I'll cover those in and then give a little, just a brief sort of perspective from the federal level. So I will start, I guess, by the senator recently made the trip over the weekend to Poland. He is, as many of you know, the co-chair of the Ukrainian caucus in the Senate, so has been engaged in these issues for many, many years. He has been advocating for continued and additional help for Ukraine, both to help with their defense and military efforts, but also on the humanitarian side. I would invite you, when he came back from Poland, he did deliver a comprehensive speech on the Senate floor. I'd invite you to watch that and hear in his own words his observations and what he is calling for as far as more support for the federal government. Today I'll sort of focus more on the humanitarian side since that's the topic here at hand. But some of the things that the delegation, Senator Portman and the delegation saw when they were in Poland, they met with Polish officials, they met with members of the 82nd Airborne, which are currently in Poland. They visited with refugees on the border, but also in a reception center that is very near the border, where refugees go to after they cross the border. There's so many relief workers and volunteers, and just an outpouring of assistance from the Polish government, from the Polish people, and from NGOs and a variety of volunteer organizations from across Poland and across Europe. One of the comments he made in his floor speech, which I thought was sort of a good summary of the current situation. He stated that we have seen the worst of humanity with the atrocities happening inside of Ukraine, but also saw the best of humanity with what he saw with the Polish people and their overwhelming outpouring of support for their neighbors from Ukraine and their willingness to help. It was a very emotional trip. He and the other senators that joined him spoke with refugees crossing the border. Most of those refugees you see are women and children, because as you're probably aware, male Ukrainians between the ages of 18 and 60 are required to stay in the country. So, it's heartbreaking that you see families having to leave their home, but also families being separated. So, it was, I know, for all of us, including the senators, very emotional. But I will tell you that the Ukrainians we spoke to, they exhibited a lot of strength, a lot of resolve, and they were not shy about telling these U.S. senators that you need to do all you can to help Ukraine fight back and defend themselves and win this war. Comments like, close our skies, give us the weapons we need, the defense materials we need to continue and win this fight. So it was really overwhelming and very interesting. But we did, as I guess my personal observation would be the amount of displaced people was overwhelming that we saw. There's close to 2 million people that have crossed into Poland alone. The border guards we spoke to said that about 100 people a minute cross from Ukraine into Poland. We were in a small border town. Spent some time there with Martha and with Andy. Population is about 54,000. And the folks we talked to were telling us that they see about 50,000 refugees every day coming through there. Now, they don't all stay. There's transportation provided and assistance provided, and they may go to other locations, maybe where they have friends or family, or where they've chosen to find a safe place. But it's an overwhelming display of people, and it is quite overwhelming. I will say, though, as big of a presence that there is of displaced Ukrainians and, struggling in the current situation, equally present is the Polish people, just expressing their willingness to help. I mean, we saw teenage girls walking through the train and just with boxes of sandwiches and juice boxes and handing food out. And I don't know who they were with. Yeah, I mean, it was really heartwarming. We have no idea who they were with, but they were, who knows? They were maybe their mom and dad sent them, or a local Girl Scouts, who knows? We saw a lot of relief workers. I mentioned the World Central Kitchen. Interestingly enough, and the senator has really highlighted this, the World Central Kitchen, it was started by a chef in Washington, D.C., Jose Andres. He has established 20 locations inside and outside of Ukraine. And amazingly, inside Ukraine, he has also set up these locations. They're doing wonderful work. They're raising funds, providing food. Senator Portman, he was on the trip with Senator Blumenthal, Senator Klobuchar, and Senator Wicker. The four of them met with the World Central Kitchen. They helped serve some meals. It was another opportunity for them to interact directly with refugees and hear more about their stories and what they're enduring. And I think it's safe to say really furthered their resolve to help the situation. I guess one of the things that the senator came back with was it furthered his resolve to help the people inside Ukraine. And we need to do all we can as a country. We need to help them with their defenses. We need to continue to help with humanitarian aid, which the most recent omnibus bill that just passed includes significant amounts of dollars for humanitarian aid that'll help USAID and other partner organizations deliver that humanitarian aid inside Ukraine and in the bordering nations where the refugees are located right now. But it clearly, the senator is continuing to advocate for that assistance, and I know wants to do all he can do personally to help. You're going to hear in a bit from my friend Marta, and I know she'll talk more about what the United Ukrainian Organizations of Ohio are doing. But I will say we have worked with them for many years. The senator talks about them often and the Fund to Aid Ukraine, and the fact that he has donated funds to that organization and that fund that is doing so much great work. And I know we get a lot of calls in our office, what can we do to help? And there are a lot of organizations doing a lot of great work, and I would encourage you all to do what you can, and I know you are. With regard to the current refugee situation, and the governor mentioned this as well. At this stage, almost all of the refugee cases are in Europe, and predominantly those bordering nations, although we did see buses from Spain who had Ukrainian humanitarian aid signs on them, and they were taking folks to Spain. So really all the nations are pitching in. But at this point, the people fleeing Ukraine will arrive into those European countries. Currently, there are no Ukrainian citizens who are coming to the United States to resettle. Now, if that changes in the weeks and months ahead, we don't know. But at this point, that's what's happening. The U.S. government and nonprofits from around the country and around Ohio, I know too, are sending humanitarian aid, food, medicine, shelter for Ukrainians, and I know we all appreciate that work so much and advocate for more of it. So that continues. With regard, there are other sort of related immigration issues. Our office always stands ready to answer questions for you or help if you have some specific situations that we can be helpful with, or just general questions on immigration that we can help with. I will say it is a challenging situation with regard to kind of other ways to immigrate, through, for example, through petition for alien resident, an I-130 visa. Individuals can apply for those. The consulates in U.S. consulates in Europe are prepared to accept those applications. My understanding is that there is quite a backlog. There's a large number of those. And again, that's, separate from refugee status. I know you're going to hear more from the experts on that as far as different ways that people come to this country. But like I said, we are more than happy to assist with any questions on that front. And then, the other thing that has happened, I guess, in the way of update from the federal level, Senator Portman led a bipartisan letter earlier in March, urging the administration to grant temporary protective status, or TPS as it's known, to the Ukrainians in the United States following the time of the Russian military invasion. He was very pleased and appreciative that a few weeks later, the administration did announce that the federal government is extending TPS status to Ukrainians in the United States. So we were very pleased for that. That'll last for the next 18 months. And so we would, that's sort of from the federal level, that's what's happening. Again, I want to thank you. I know so many of you here have helped in other similar crises, and we thank you for that. And we know that in many cases it's personal. Many of us have personal stories of families who have gotten to this country through similar situations over time, whether it was World War II or before. My personal situation is my grandmother was a Armenian refugee, orphan and refugee, and it was only through the kindness of strangers that she made her way over to this country eventually after a few stops along the way. And I grew up with other Armenian families with, everyone had a different story, but a very similar story of tragedy that thankfully through the help of strangers and organizations, they made their way to a new life. So I know that Greater Cleveland and Ohio is going to continue to stand with Ukraine. I encourage you to do that, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you to Senator Portman for his leadership on this issue. And I know that all of the members of Ohio's delegation to Congress are very much involved in these issues, receiving calls from their constituents. And I know many of them have district representatives here today as well. So thank you for all the support that you're providing. Next, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Johnson, who is the State Refugee Coordinator for the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, who will talk about how refugees make their way to Ohio, what services they can expect upon arrival, and how we get connected with them. So Jennifer, welcome. And she'll have a lot of information about the ordinary process. So turn it over to you.
Thank you, Director, and good afternoon. You will find the slideshow that I'll be reviewing in your handout, in your packet, in your folder, if you'd like to follow along. Before I hit upon the statuses that are listed on the slide, or the definitions, I'm sorry, of the statuses listed on the slide, I first want to identify what the term immigrant means. Immigrant simply means an individual who goes to a foreign country, or in our purposes, individuals who arrive to the United States. We all know there's many different paths and many different ways individuals can arrive in the United States. The group of individuals we're focusing on today are fleeing their home country because of severely dangerous conditions, and they're unable to return. The only way they can come to the United States is to receive a specific status or type of visa. So listed on the slides, the definitions, of course, are the most commonly known, I'd say, in the past year, and largest population of individuals with this type of status. Of course, there's refugee. These are individuals who are fleeing their country due to a well-founded fear of persecution and are unable to return. We have special immigrant visa holders, or SIVs. These are individuals who work with the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan. And most recently, we had a group, Afghan humanitarian parolees. These individuals came through the refugee process. The process was a little bit different due to the evacuation effort in Afghanistan. I did want to make a distinction between the word refugee and refugee status. I think we're all watching the news every day and we see the terminology Ukrainian refugees, refugees fleeing Ukraine. The term they're using is absolutely correct. They're leaving their country due to a war, and they're fleeing to a second country for safety. However, they do not have refugee status, at least not at this time. What I'm going to walk through is what normally is going to happen through the process of refugees or those of similar status upon the path it takes to arrive to the United States. So it's going to begin in their home country. They're fleeing their home country. They're going to a second country for safety. Normally there is a refugee camp there. There they'll be with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Again, this is an international effort. The United States is not the only country to resettle refugees. If they are bound for the US, they will go through extensive screening through Homeland Security. It's at this point where two large federal agencies begin to take over. That is the Department of Health and Human Services and also the Department of State. There are 9 national resettlement agencies. These 9 national resettlement agencies work closely with the Department of State to determine where in the United States the refugees will be placed among the local affiliates that the national agencies oversee. This is a complex, thorough process that many things are taken into consideration, such as if that refugee has family in a certain city or state, perhaps a medical condition would be well suited to go to a certain city, or things of that nature. Once the placements are determined, a refugee will arrive in the United States and will be immediately greeted by the Refugee Resettlement Agency to which they have been assigned to. At that point, the resettlement agency will continue to start to connect them to the specific services offered by the state of Ohio. You're soon going to hear directly from resettlement agencies about their extensive and hard work that they do on a daily basis. This is just a very high-level overview of the many services that they're responsible for. Ohio has 9 resettlement agencies across the state in the 6 highlighted metro counties. Although the resettlement agencies are located in metro counties, based on available housing and employment opportunities, they may be placed outside of the metro county areas to reside. The next slide will show the detailed contact information of the 9 national resettlement agencies. Of the 9 local Ohio resettlement agencies. The role of Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, the Refugee Services program is within ODJFS, and our programs are dedicated to assist refugees to help them become self-sufficient in the shortest time possible. The local resettlement agencies must determine prior to the beginning of each federal fiscal year how many refugees they have the capacity to receive for the upcoming year. They go through many steps, working with their national agency, working with the Department of State, and one of those steps is also consulting with our area to get our feedback on their capacity to serve a number of refugees for the upcoming year. This is a list of programs that our area oversees. The first 2 programs listed, refugees are eligible to receive soon upon their arrival. Refugee medical screening, we enter into grant agreements with healthcare providers throughout the state in the 6 metro counties. The resettlement agencies schedule the medical screening upon arrival. The health care providers provide the screening. They also refer the refugees on for primary care or specialized care as needed. Refugee cash assistance is administered by the County Department of Job and Family Services. The short-term cash assistance benefit that individuals who are ineligible for a TANF or SSI may receive. It can be received for up to 8 months after their arrival. The last 6 programs listed are our larger programs. Our largest program is Refugee Support Services. It's an employment and training program. All of these last 6 programs, we also have grant agreements with providers across the state in the 6 metro counties. Our partners include resettlement agencies, refugee serving nonprofits, and also for our school impact grant, we partner with school districts and educational service centers. Access to this program is either through referrals to resettlement agencies, the providers themselves do outreach, or word of mouth in the community. These are just some examples of the components of the services I just spoke about. All of the programs are focused on employment and self-sufficiency as quickly as possible. However, all the services also offer ways to help remove barriers to employment, services to help maintain employment, and also services to support individuals who are non-employable family members, such as children and the elderly. The services highlighted in blue, refugees may receive for up to 5 years from their date of arrival. In yellow, they can receive beyond the 5 years. Refugees may also be eligible for mainstream public assistance benefits. They just need to apply at their local county Department of Job and Family Services. Thank you for having me this afternoon. Please utilize the index cards in your folder if you have any questions, or also utilize the email box listed on our slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. So next, we've put together 2 panel discussions that will first take a look at the refugee resettlement process through the eyes of 3 Cleveland area resettlement agencies. And then we'll follow with a focus on the human aspect of resettlement. It's not only what communities do for our new arrivals, but also what our new arrivals do for the community. So as Michael McCrite, who will be moderating our first panel, comes, as well as the panelists, please join me in welcoming them, and they will introduce themselves in turn.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Jennifer laid out the overview of receiving refugees, we are fortunate today to be able to have some of our colleagues here who directly interact and welcome folks as they come into our area. We have 3 knowledgeable representatives here from 3 of our Ohio's refugee resettlement agencies, who are going to enter into some discussion with us today around that whole process and the important work that they do. So first, though, before we do that, I would like to just go ahead and have you all just briefly introduce yourselves and your organization, and then we'll get into our questions. We'd like to start here with Darren.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Darren Ham. I'm the director of the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. We have a field office here in Cleveland, Ohio, one of 7 across the country, and part of a network of more than 35 organizations around the country. We have actually been resettling refugees and serving immigrants for more than 100 years in Northeast Ohio. So if it were 100 years ago this year, and you were coming from Eastern Europe or Southern Europe, you would have probably come through our doors when we were originally a formation of the YWCA International Institute program out of New York City. So glad to be here.
Thank you, Michael. My name is Alicia Hirsch. I'm the Resettlement Programs Manager for Us Together Cleveland. I joined the agency nearly 4 years ago after hearing a heart-wrenching story about Syrian refugees. What struck me was their resilience. In the face of catastrophe, they are able to keep going, to overcome, and make a new life. It never ceases to amaze me. This is what reminds me that even when things get tough, I need to push through and continue helping in any way I can. Working for Us Together has been the perfect opportunity to do this. We are a mutual assistance agency, which means we were started and still managed by former refugees. This ensures their insight on various situations is uniquely suited to provide unwavering guidance on how to best help some of the most vulnerable people in the world.
Hi, I'm Heath Rosenberger, Catholic Charities, Diocese of Cleveland. I'm a program director. I've been there for over 12 years. We have a wide range of services to assist refugees and immigrants, immigration legal services, refugee resettlement, employment programs, medical case management, healthcare navigation, survivors of torture, services for single mothers, English language training, and many others. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Today, we're of course talking about potential refugees coming from the situation in Ukraine, but you all, as you've enumerated here, serve refugees on a daily basis year round. So if you thought it would be helpful if you could talk just a little bit about what you do to prepare for having refugees come in. We're talking today about being prepared for anything that may come, and you certainly are professionals in that area. If you could shed some light on that. Alicia, would you like to start that one?
Sure, thank you. So when we receive notice that a case has been assigned to us, we will review the case for details that will inform our plan for the family's resettlement. This includes any urgent medical needs, family size, and connections to the community, or what we call a U.S. tie. So if the family has a U.S. tie, we'll contact them to let them know if their family or that their family or friend is getting ready to travel, and confirm with them that they're still willing to help them resettle. It is important to note, resettlement can be vastly different from family to family. This depends on their culture, English proficiency, education, whether they have any existing community support, and many other factors. Our resettlement team takes great care in incorporating all of these factors into generating a reception plan to help address all of these needs that the family will have throughout their initial resettlement period. We also meet with our other program coordinators to assess whether they are a good fit for enrollment in those programs. We have two main programs aside from our initial reception and placement program. And the first one is Matching Grant, which is an employment assistance program that includes digital literacy, job readiness training, and job placement. And some individuals have more serious vulnerabilities. So the Preferred Communities program is designed to provide more robust support. And we connect them with services to their community and educate them on how they can work towards self-sufficiency.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Heath or Darren, do you have anything that you would like to add on that one before we go to the next question?
She summed it up pretty well.
She summed it up. Oh, okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. So there are times when the predicted flow of refugees in is disrupted, and we get a much larger group coming in than anticipated. An example of that would have been the displaced Afghanis last year. And so if we have a situation where we would need and we would have an influx of additional refugees from Ukraine, how can we, what challenges are you presented with? And Heath, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Is that working? We're gonna do this. Sorry about that, Governor. All right, so challenges. We have a lot of challenges in refugee resettlement, and it is mostly due to timing. Sometimes we only receive 1 to 2 weeks notice before we have a refugee family arrive. So there's much to prepare for before we pick them up at the airport. One of the biggest challenges is housing. Everyone knows that housing costs are up, rental costs continue to go up. We've been priced out of many communities that we have traditionally resettled refugees in. Our search is also limited because we need to find homes that are on public transportation. And it can also be problematic to convince landlords to rent to refugees. Refugees don't have credit history. They don't have US employment history. Sometimes their social security cards are delayed, and the resettlement offices do not co-sign on the lease. We've also had to use temporary housing, which can create a backlog when we're trying to find permanent housing for new families that come. However, we've had a lot of success with the Afghan crisis. We've really come together through the Refugee Services Collaborative. We've decided to pool our resources on housing. with a company called Smart Development, where we would share housing leads, which has been very beneficial. So if Catholic Charities has a 2-bedroom that we don't need, we can pass that along to our colleagues and vice versa. We've also had huge community support, especially from the Catholic community. St. Ambrose in Brunswick, St. Coleman in Cleveland, and the Sisters of Notre Dame doing housing setups, temporary housing, and finding permanent housing for us. So this is one area where the community can work with us to help find rental properties. Employment is another challenge because of the time sensitivity of our programming. Reception and placement, the initial resettlement program is only 30 to 90 days. So it's very, very important to find early employment. Thankfully, here in Cleveland and throughout Ohio, the job market is very good. And we have many, many companies and business leaders that are willing to work with refugees. ODI, National Safety Apparel, Cleveland Clinic is one of many. So we need more employers. We need employers that offer good wages, are flexible with refugees being able to continue their education, and offer career pathways as well. Transportation can be a challenge because it really sets up everything that we do. Like I said, the housing, where people can get jobs, how people get to school, how people access the community. So we need volunteers to help us with travel training and also to donate cars. It's rare, but when we get donations, it just does not help one family or one person. We can carpool 2, 3, 4, 5 people that are then able to access employment that they might not have been able to otherwise. Education is a challenge just because it takes so long. School enrollments for children, the paperwork. I want to thank all of our partners, CMSD, Thomas Jefferson, Parma City Schools, and Lakewood City Schools for all of your work with refugee children. With medical care, refugees come with a significant amount of trauma, which can delay early employment. But all refugees go through a health screening during their first 30 days of arrival. And Neighborhood Family Practice is the organization that completes all of our health screenings for our clients, and they do an amazing job. And finally, community access. Because of all that trauma, sometimes refugees are afraid to venture outside of their home. So it's important to recruit mentors that we train, we background check, so they can get into homes and help refugees when the resettlement agency is not there. So that could be opening mail, taking children to the park, to the museums, walking to the grocery store, just an extra layer of support. So I've listed many challenges, but the one thing that's really good, that most of these challenges can be met through community support. And in Cleveland and Cuyahoga, we have that community support. So I really, really thank you. And I know we'll have that with the Ukrainian refugees when they come.
Thank you for that. I know that housing is very much an immediate need. So Darren, I think you were going to elaborate a little bit more on some of what you've seen and some of what we can do to assist with that.
Yeah, and Heath pointed out the real big milestones and the challenges we're all faced with in refugee resettlement. You can imagine when a refugee arrives and is granted $1,000 to their name, the amount of work that has to be done from the community and from the organizations that we help lead to help support those individuals and those families. That definitely layers into housing when that $1,000 has to stretch towards a security deposit and first month's rent, let alone equipping those houses with furniture, household goods, a refrigerator full of groceries, and on and on. We extend our hands and open our doors to all the kindness that the community has to offer, because to make $1 out of every 15 cents is extremely challenging in the world of refugee resettlement. As Heath pointed out, we're in a very challenging housing market. We're at over 90% occupancy rate in the rental market, not only in Northeast Ohio, but nationally. And that puts us in a position where, in order to successfully resettle a family, that is one of the #1 things we have to do. We get the notification, we have to secure housing. We've got to find somewhere that is safe and secure for them to reside, even if only in the short term. Ideally, that short term is that first 6 months of their life here in Northeast Ohio. The market, I mean, when we see people resettle, a lot of people ask us where they're going, where they go once they arrive, following historic trends. I mean, if we looked at our city 100 years ago, we'd see almost every pocket of the city of Cleveland and the region here more broadly in Northeast Ohio being at least 50% immigrant or refugee. We're at about 4 to 5% immigrant and refugee within the city limits at this point. And many are currently residing west of the Cuyahoga River and in the inner ring suburbs, places like even North Olmsted, Parma, Cleveland Heights as well. When we think about housing though, and we think about how to extend those costs and make ends meet on behalf of those families that we serve, we are dealing with a lot of very large family sizes too. So we can be looking for housing to accommodate families of 8 to 10, and in some of the cases over the past 6 months, 10 to 13 individuals. And you can only imagine how far money can go and how much housing stock is available to accommodate those sort of needs. So we get, I'd say we're pretty creative. And ideally don't lean on things like temporary solutions like hotels and convents and things like we had to lean on pretty heavily during the resettlement of Afghans since October. But we ideally get people into a place where they can grow and really build their new life around both enrollment in school, access to healthcare services, initial employment supports like Heath outlined, so that they can really grow from a place that they could anchor into for the short term.
We'll pass it back. All right. Thank you for that. That is a very critical. Housing is obviously a very critical aspect. He highlighted on it in his list of challenges. I think the second challenge that he identified there was employment. And we know that that is very important. It's an important piece to establish yourself and then to move forward. Alicia, would you like to talk a little bit about some employment opportunities?
Happy to do so. Thank you. As you might guess, English language proficiency and transportation are two of the biggest challenges in the initial resettlement and early employment process. However, I would like to highlight some of the other issues we encounter. I think we can all agree finding a job in the US right now is not that difficult. What does make things challenging is working with employers who may not have a full understanding of what is needed to make, or I'm sorry, what is needed to be able to hire a refugee worker. As most of you know, to get a job in the US, you must have certain items to prove your identity and eligibility to work. Typically, this is done with a state ID and a social security card. If our clients don't have these, we sometimes run into issues with employers who are not familiar with the other acceptable documents. For our clients, any delays in getting these items causes delays in employment and can seriously impact their ability to work towards self-sufficiency in their new community. Sometimes delays are caused by volume. A large influx, for example, might cause delays in processing a social security card application. Other items or other times, individuals processing a request for a state ID may not know what pieces of information are acceptable. The resettlement agencies are tasked with advocating for clients when they run into these situations. Another challenge we sometimes run into, especially with new employers, is a lack of experience and specific knowledge of what is needed for a refugee to be able to work in the United States. It is times like these where the resettlement agency steps in to educate employers on the legal status of refugees and their ability to work. To be clear, all refugees have legal permanent resident status as soon as they arrive. Their eligibility to work never expires.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to add anything on the employment front there?
I think just to acknowledge the diversity of people that we serve coming from regions from throughout the world. It's not all the time that when you close your eyes and think of a refugee, everyone might look like that or come from the regions of the world you have impressions of. We have many, many talented people with high levels of ability, skill, and that doesn't port very well when you arrive with very little to your name. And I think we really try and advocate on behalf of folks on a daily basis to show that we believe deeply in these individuals and their ability to grow and build new livelihoods in our communities. They add such tremendous value to the fabric of our communities. To give them those opportunities are really vital to us and the success of our work overall. So.
Great. Great. Thank you so much for that. Yes, indeed. I think the opportunity for everyone to grow and reach their maximum potential, I think is just fantastic. And that's kind of leading into this next question a little bit, because what we find is a lot of folks who are coming in and they'll find themselves in a very different place culturally. And so how do we assist them, and what are some of the services that you all provide in helping them to adapt and understand the environment that they find themselves in? Heath, would you like to start with this one?
Yeah, so the refugee experience is one of loss, unfortunately. You know, as we've seen on TV, you can just only start to imagine what it would be like to lose everything, to completely start over, start your career over. There's a loss of community, a real sense of loneliness, and a complete environment change in some circumstances. Imagine someone moving from a farming community now to Cleveland in an urban environment. But there's also great hope. There's a new home. There's access to education that might not have been there before, potential for prosperity, a better future, and most importantly, a chance to rebuild. So we need to manage those two things. And the way that we do that is to try to help set expectations. And one of the ways that we do that is cultural orientation. All new arrivals must go through cultural orientation at our offices, and we go over a wide range of topics to help set those expectations. We talk about American culture, how to be on time, the importance of time. We talk about our communities, the history, how to access all of the great resources in this area. We talk about emergency services, EMS, fire, the police, when to call 911, the importance of education, making sure children go to school, how to attend higher education, also employment, real focus on short and long-term goals. We have many people, as Darren mentioned, that may have been professionals prior to arriving, and they may not be able to get back into that career field right away due to the time that it takes for degree evaluation, accreditation, et cetera. So we really want to focus on short and long-term goals. We talk about healthcare, the importance of taking your medication, following doctor's orders, attending appointments, and then also immigration and citizenship questions. When can I get my green card? How do I become a citizen? How do I apply for family reunification? And when can I become a citizen, and what is that process like? We review all of our programs to set the expectations, the time frame, the responsibility of the office and our caseworkers, and then also the responsibility of the refugee. So everyone is on the same page. We talk about renting homes, buying homes, insurance, also purchasing a car, the cost benefit of public transportation versus buying a car and having to buy car insurance, getting a driver's license, paying for gas. We also talk about things like the weather. For folks that come in January and February, it's really difficult for them to understand that we do have seasons. But today, I think on the St. Patrick's Day, it shows that we do have beautiful weather in Ohio. So
All right. Would anyone else like to add on?
Yeah, thank
Alicia?
you. Thank you, Michael. I just wanted to add on that in addition to the large scale cultural orientations that we put on at various locations, we also are continuously doing this in every single meeting that we have with clients. We talk about things as they organically come up, paying the rent, paying the bills, getting your kids to school, enrollment. A lot of the things that we kind of take for granted as Americans that everybody knows. So I just wanted to emphasize that as well.
All right, great. Thank you. Darren, would you have anything additional to add? Okay, perfect. Well, we wanted to highlight on a few of the major challenges that our agencies encounter around housing, employment, and just assisting folks as they adapt to a new environment. What I know we have here is a lot of individuals and a lot of organizations which would like to know how they might be able to help and assist. So taking a look at that, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the types of donations and services and all that they could offer. I know that Heath covered some of that initially, and we talked a little bit about how folks are being creative in assisting you all with that. But if we can just talk a little bit about what folks could do, as well as when the timing is, because I know timing is equally as important. So if we could maybe start with Heath, start with Darren here. Okay, perfect.
Take some of the weight off of Heath over there. I don't think any of us could have envisioned, after receiving the news in August of last year about the fall of Afghanistan and Kabul in particular, what would have been coming about 6 weeks later. And I think, me personally, I don't think I could have envisioned doing a lot of that work with the really lean team we had at the time. Most of our agencies have been pretty well disassembled at that point. We were in a mode of staffing up, kind of re-envisioning what programming was going to look like with potentially new refugee ceilings that we were going to be accepting across the country. And I think when we looked at what we were going to be faced with mass arrivals, doing more in 1 week than we had done in an entire year, I think we really started to calculate who were our partners, who are our allies and friends, who were those volunteers that were willing to show up and do some of the work, because we had to spread it out. There was no way possible. And I think we really depended heavily on the people that came to our doors without even soliciting that need. We had many people when that news hit on the afternoon and evenings of August 15th and beyond that were knocking down our doors and saying, how do we help? And we opened up every avenue we could, like you do as an agency that needs to depend on the community it lives within. You keep every avenue open and you take kindness where it's granted. For us, that meant very obvious things. Monetary donations were always number one. It went right to the bottom line, and we passed it right through to do things like feed people, clothe people, get furniture for people that cannot come out of that $1,000 I told you about earlier. Those were obvious ways to connect for community to just support that said, maybe I couldn't come out and lift a couch for you and go set up an apartment, but I can write you this check and we can help you do the work that you do every day and pay for your caseworkers and all the supports that you provide. Beyond that, we saw people show up with household goods. People wanted to buy things like mops, if you could believe it, and wanted to buy things like pillowcases and sheets. This stuff that you would absolutely take for granted, which is so often the case when we're working in refugee resettlement. The very most obvious things are overlooked. So when people are showing up with those, you couldn't imagine how far that extends that gratitude forward to the families that would be arriving in those waves. Some of those individuals would stick around and set the houses up. They would clean up the apartments, the kinds of apartments I'm talking about that we can get for about $600 a month. They're there to mop, clean, decorate, make the place look like a home, because it's probably been a long time. Many of the families we're serving have seen a place that they can call home or feel comfortable. So those were really critical elements of leveraging kindness into a new family or a new individual that we were going to be bringing in. Some even wanted to go deeper. Some wanted to stick around and be mentors and supporters of those individuals and families we'd welcome in. And they're still doing it today. So while that started on October 5th for our office and those wave of arrivals, that's extended through today and hopefully going to carry out here forward. Many international refugee resettlement systems are based upon principles of community sponsorship, support circles or sponsorship circles, whereby community members, they could be literally geographic neighbors, people living next to one another, family circles, or other community partners banding together to support families in need. So they come together and they help extend the work our case managers do every single day. So there's a side-by-side relationship that says, we'll cover this, you cover this, call us when you need help, which is almost every night. And we do it together. We do it as a team, because I think when we have a pledged community that believes in what we do, they believe deeply in what we do, and they want to stick by our side and show like, hey, our little tiny piece of this pie, this 20-year through line that might have existed in your country, we were here to do this for you, and it's our chance to give it back. And I think that to us showed an overwhelming amount of support that we needed in a really critical crisis moment, where I really believe we would have crumbled under some of the pressure we faced, that showed the community was there to have our back. So it goes back to some of the comments I think earlier that nod to Cleveland being a place that was overwhelmingly immigrant in its core and its upbringing. And I think it shows that we have a lot easier job, thankfully, in a place like Cleveland, Ohio, than some of our colleagues did in the resettlement of prior waves of people. But we have many, many ways to come in and support. As Heath mentioned earlier, where we're centralizing some of those functions with our amongst peers, something unique to our collaborative in Northeast Ohio is the Refugee Services Collaborative, a partnership of 14 organizations that we work extremely closely on the resettlement of people here in this region. And we're thinking about every little element and that kind of full spectrum of what a human needs when they come to Northeast Ohio. Some of us are meeting on a weekly basis to really go through the rigor of what the day-to-day stuff and the gears of this machine are. And some of us are looking much longer term to grow people in community across time. One of those centralized function, though, is that opportunity to volunteer and connect with community and kind of pledge what you have to offer and let us match that to what we have in need. And those kind of opportunities are available through finding us on the Refugee Services Collaborative. We'll be sure that information shared hereafter for everybody interested.
I just wanted to mention, because you asked about timing, and he did mention in his comments that sometimes we only have like a couple of days before we know a family is coming. So those who are willing to assist us with the resettlement of families, we ask that you be patient with us. That we often do not have very much information to go on when families are coming, and we need you to be able to mobilize quickly. So having partnerships in place and being ready and being able to move on a moment's notice to be able to set up a house, gather donations, deliver donations, coordinate all of the steps that need to happen before that family arrives. Those are some of the most important things that we need from our community partners.
Well, great. Thank you very much. I think this discussion was very enlightening about the important work that the resettlement agencies do, the challenges that they face, and how as a community we can come together with places that we can assist them in their work. I appreciate your time and attendance today on this panel, and I thank you and your teams back in the agencies for all that you do to help assist individuals and families as they resettle successfully here in Ohio. As this panel exits, if you would please give them, join me in giving them a round of applause, and we'll have our second panel up. While the next panel gets seated in here and situated, much of our focus to this point has really been on the process of resettling here in Ohio. But the core of what we're really talking about here are people, individuals. And so what we'd like to talk about today here with this next panel is that each person, whether it's the individual who's fleeing or it's the individual here who is welcoming them and helping to establish them in the community, has a story. And so what we'd like to hear is our three very different stories from the experience and the work that they do to help assist folks. Our first, we'll hear from an individual who was displaced and has resettled here from Afghanistan and is now helping other refugees who come here. We also have an individual here who's going to talk about the recent visit with some humanitarian work that she has done over to help Ukrainians on the border in Poland. And then we also have an individual who has a very unique perspective to see not only how the community helps individuals who are settling here, but also how those individuals enrich our community and make it better, and hear about that. So I think we'll start off down with Baksamin Makbel. If you would please tell us just a little bit about yourself, your experience leaving Afghanistan, and your family and yourself since you've been arrived.
I'm the most lucky person that currently I'm sitting among the wonderful people of Cleveland and as well as Ohio. They're lovely people from each and every angle, according to my point of view. When in our neighborhood, when people getting know that we are from Afghanistan and we're new here, so they're just offering support, like what can we do for you people? So they're lovely people. So this is Baksamin Makbel. I came here through SIV on August 8, 2021. So I came here without visa because of the condition of Afghanistan. So the US Embassy contacted me over there that you need to leave this country because the condition is changing. So then I asked them that I don't have a visa, what to do? They replied me in minutes that no need the visa. So we can arrange a special flight for you. So you need to leave. So they arranged a special flight for us, and we were about 280 people. So we left Kabul on 8 August and came to Qatar, and we spent there about 2 hours. And after that, we came to Dallas, the Washington. I spent there 2 or 3 days. After that, on 12th August, I came to Cleveland. So the staff of us together welcome me, they give me a very warm welcome. So thank you very much. So they're sitting there. They're wonderful people. And they provided me a temporary house. After some days I spent there. After that, so they provide me a permanent house. So currently I'm living on the west side of Cleveland. So they help me from each and every angle. They enroll my children in school, and they connect us with the health services. They provide they guide us how to enroll for English classes. Like my wife is currently is regularly going to the Hope Center for getting her English classes. And after that, after some time, so I applied for a position in with USCRI. So Darren Ham recruited me, so I joined that place as a case aide. But after 2 weeks, I have been promoted to a case manager. So I'm proud working under his supervision. So thank you very much, Darren. Yeah. So currently we are living a very happy life over here. So we are adopting the culture over here. We are adopting the environment. So to be very honest, we are blessed. We are in Ohio. And also Mr. Joe, he is here. He's a wonderful man, and he's also supporting me. I have to build my career over here. So thank you, Joe, as well. Yeah. So that was yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that very, very personal story and personal experience. And I know when we were talking before, you had talked about how your children are just loving school and maybe a little bit bored on the weekends, you said.
Yeah. In Afghanistan, my children were making excuses for not going to school. But over here, the scenario is quite different. they're loving school. So a school is a kind of fun for them. On weekends, so they become bored at home, to be very honest. So thank you to the staff of Thomas Jefferson. So that's a wonderful school and that's a wonderful staff. Yeah, and also I can tell you another story of my daughter. She was suffering from stomachache in Afghanistan. And we took her to different doctors over there. And I took her to Pakistan as well, but in vain. But when we come here, so the doctor prescribed only 2 tablets. So currently she's totally fine. And yeah, so that is the thing. So that is the health services over here. So everything when I'm seeing here, we are feeling like we're blessed. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, next, I don't know that she needs any introduction, but who we have with us today is Marta Kelleher. And if you would please tell us about the important work that you're doing in your recent visit abroad, I think we'd be very interested.
Thank you. I'd love to. And thank you for hosting St. Vladimir's today. So our organization is United Ukrainian Organizations of Ohio. The organization was established in 1928, and our members are organizations. So it's an umbrella. We have approximately 40 organizations that are part, and the organizations are comprised of civic organizations, cultural organizations, churches, religious organizations, financial, and we have integrated generations of immigrants. And so we here are ready to help with what needs to be done if and when we have refugees that come to the state of Ohio. So I would like to share some observations from our trip. We did journal, so if you can just indulge me for a moment. And I do know that each of you here, you've all been affected by this devastation and horror, really, of this unprovoked Russian war on Ukraine. And so we're all asking, how can we all help with the suffering that is going on? So Karen and I had the opportunity to visit the border, and what we witnessed were generations of Ukrainians that are fleeing. They are grandmothers, their mothers, their children. And frankly, it was a bit surprising and it was surreal. They look like you, they look like me, meaning that the people were at work one day, they went to bed, their cities or villages were bombed, and now they're fleeing the next day with a bag in hand and their child in hand and leaving their husband and other families behind. And some are making these long trips. They're making trips from Eastern Ukraine to Western Ukraine that can take days at a time on a train, assuming they can get on the train when they arrive at the train station. So we heard that they were heading west for safety. And we just happened to be on the border the morning of the Yavoriu bombing that had occurred. And so those that were traveling east to west were doing it for safety purposes, but they soon realized that the bombing would now force them to continue on west into Poland. And there was one grandmother in particular who was in her 80s that was sitting on the border. There's a neutral zone between the Polish border, a neutral zone, and then the Ukrainian border. And she was in a wheelchair. She was off the side of the road, covered in a blanket. And she had said to us that her children had sent her ahead from the east. And there she sat for a day or so during the day, just to be sure she didn't miss her children that would be passing in the next group of people so they could get reunited. And the U.S. Senate delegation spoke with her. And, you know, as she held back her tears and they asked her about what her feelings were about the situation, and I quote, she said, "All the annihilation and end of peace is because of one man." And so Poland has done a wonderful job of organizing. Their effort is very grand. It's commendable because, as Karen mentioned, 100 refugees are actually moving from the Ukrainian border into Poland. And so there's a process that's been put in place, unlike the process that Governor DeWine had during COVID with our Ohio Army National Guard. Very structured, a place to be welcomed, a place to have a hot meal, have some temporary lodging, a place to get your pet food because people are traveling with their pets as well, all without cost, no cost. They can travel on the train without cost. They pass through for a period of 48 hours before they are then moving westward to whatever their location is going to be. Some of them have family and friends that live in Poland. Some have been working in Poland, and they have a place either there or in the European Union. But one thing that we did here was they expressed the hope of returning to their native homeland at some point. So as we talk about the refugee status, if I can go right into that, you know, it's an important decision because the individual needs to relinquish their Ukrainian passport and citizenship. So most are hoping to eventually return to Ukraine, and they're currently choosing countries that are geographically close to their husbands and to their homeland. But we need to be prepared because, you know, as we know from World War II, America integrated and absorbed over 200,000 Ukrainian immigrants. And so our Ohio and the area here in Northeast Ohio is equipped to be able to bring in the refugees and settle them in an area that is safe for them, where they do understand the culture, and also stand to assist with any other questions or issues that they may have. And working with organizations, and I know you've had this experience as well, when you have these organizations that are good partner organizations, and Joe was the first one on the phone when this war broke out to say, you know, how can we help? How can Global Cleveland help?
I think we should clap for him. Yeah.
And Governor DeWine, thank you for highlighting our community's efforts through the fundforukraine.org, because that is absolutely what has propelled us into being able to help the people of Ukraine that need the help now. And also to be able to integrate refugees that are going to be coming potentially to Ohio. So pulling the right people together, pulling the organizations together, and having this network of stakeholders is very important to integrating refugees that may come.
Thank you. Thank you. I apologize. I have a little laryngitis, so I've got cough drops. Thank you, Governor DeWine, for bringing us all together at St. Vlad's. It wouldn't have happened without you. Governor, you've been there for the newcomer community immigrants your whole career, and we just really appreciate you, Governor. We're lucky that we have you. Thank you. Sincerely. I can honestly say, as a son of immigrants and someone who's been working in this field for some time, I've never seen a group like this before. And the question is, what can we do now? I think Jennifer Johnson said it very well. It really depends on whether there's a fast track for refugees that gets designated. It's complicated. As Marta said, my mom said until she died, she was from former Yugoslavia, she was Slovenian, Jože, I'm going home someday. Right? Everyone wants to go home. But how can we make it good for them while they're here? And while you heard from, I think, 3 of the best resettlement agencies in the country, from Darren Alicia and from Catholic Diocese, There's 3 other organizations that work really hard. Patrick Kearns is here from Refugee Response, Building Hope in the City, and Asia, Ohio. Between those 6, they've been doing right for the people from Afghanistan, from Sudan, from Kosovo, and for the Russians who were fleeing the Soviet Empire because they were Jewish. What Global Cleveland does is we try to make sure that people are coordinating and that we're working together. We serve the organizations that are doing so much of the frontline work. And during the Afghanistan response, we were able to raise several $100,000 that went directly, not to us, to the organizations that were doing this work, and we're ready to do that again. On our globalcleveland.org email, our website, we have a place where you can sign up if you have an apartment, if you have a job, if you want to do something. People want to do something now. We have to advocate to our federal officials to create a fast track for refugee status if people want it. The one thing that we've been communicating to our federal officials is, regardless of how people come here from Ukraine, especially for the ones who want to go back, let us have an unrestricted work visa for everyone that comes. Let the federal government not make the decision of whether people are going to go back or not. That's to the Ukrainian family and God. But let people work here instead of the hoops that our federal government makes people jump through. Depending on the visa they're here, J1, student visa, Karen talked a little bit about the other places too. But I want to just say something. In this room, we've got a lot of history. You've got Sister Rita Mary Harwood from the Catholic Diocese, who for over a half a century has been welcoming people from all over the world. You've got You've got the Jewish Federation here that stands side by side here in this Orthodox Church with people. And I think that one of the reasons why the governor wanted us to have this conversation today is that Cleveland is the place, Northeast Ohio is the place where this happens the best. I was asked by our wonderful MC just to share a few things. We know for a fact that we have more jobs right now than workers, which is why we have to have unrestricted work visa, I would say, for all of our newcomers. Secondly, we know that people are going to start coming, if not in the next few weeks, in the next few months, and we have to stay laser focused on them before another crisis or something distracts people. I was happy Bach's here. People are still coming from Afghanistan, and we have to be ready for the people that are going to be coming from Ukraine. Finally, I'll just say it is really fortunate in our community to have people like Marta Kelleher, but also people like Andy Fedinsky, Terry Shmagala, and Andy Fute, who, in my opinion, are national leaders in terms of the importance of a strong Ukraine and United States relationship. We've done this before. My mom, when she fled communist Yugoslavia, was helped by your parents. We can do this again for the people here. And we constantly tell people to donate to Marta's Fund. If you want to sign up, we share all of our volunteer information with the organizations that are serving. We have to be ready for when people come. And God bless us and God save Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was great information. And many times when we get organic, we kind of, the discussion, we jump right over the introductions. This is Joe Simperman, who is with Global Cleveland, just so you have all that. Those were great stories, great motivation, and great advice. Is there anything else that you would like to share about what folks can do, the organizations in this room, or how we can be prepared if and when this evolving event comes?
Well, we would ask, in working with Global Cleveland and being able to put together lists of people who have an interest or expressed an interest, we have found that the avenues are different. Some will utilize their tourist visas to come here without knowing that that is not a refugee status. It does not expose in terms of what kind of help is available to them as refugees. So there has to be some communication with individuals, but we would be happy to, along with Global Cleveland, to take in a list and start to assess the number of people. Joe just texted during our time there at the table that there's a family that just arrived to Brook Park. So the information is coming through all sorts of avenues, but we want to streamline it into one particular way. So please, reach out to Joe or myself, and then we'll be able to assist with some of the information.
I'll just share. The text came from an economic development director in Ukraine, and I'll read the text. It came in today, Governor, at 3:02. Ukrainian family just landed here in Brook Park. They need to be connected. They have a language barrier. There's a mom and a 10-year-old child, right? I'm looking about 20 people in this room who could do something right away. So the first thing that we did was we connected this person to someone that we employ as a translator. And then Marta's got this now. It's just really an important part about sharing this kind of information with each other, because people are going to start coming. What does that mean? Does it make a difference? Because of those people at that table there, Heath and the folks from the refugee community, they lobbied our county government. And we have our executive here, County Executive Budish, that for the first time is putting together a fund for refugees to come from the county, right? Advocacy matters. Governor listens to people all the time, speaking to our elected officials, telling them what we want. It matters, especially when we're a united community. It also matters that we communicate with each other. And I'm going to find out more about this family when we leave. I don't know what status they have, but the truth is, as we work together and work with Marta, we can do something for the families that are coming, regardless of the status that they come through with.
Great, thank you. Any other closing comments that any of the panel members would like to make here?
Well, thank you for hosting, Governor DeWine. Thank you for actually putting this forum together. It's quite timely. We are going to work with all of our partners to make this transition as easy as it can be in these situations. I also wanted to thank Mr. Budish, because the Cuyahoga County administration also reached out initially and asked how they could help. And thank you for putting out our fund for Ukraine, as well as a forum for people to be able to, all your county employees to be able to contribute. We're part of the fabric of Cuyahoga County and of Ohio. And so we're grateful for all the support.
So thank you very much, everyone. I just want to share my experience. When people are coming from different countries, it doesn't mean that they all should work with OT, like a kind of ground level work. So there are some talented people as well. So please help them in getting appropriate job. So that's and also there are some people they have done their school 10+2 in Afghanistan, in different countries. But over here, the higher education is very expensive for them. So if there is a kind of quota system or a scholarship system for them, so that will be also a big help. So thank you very much.
I'll just say one thing in closing. There's so many people that want to help. Mr. William Gary, the Executive Vice President of Tri-C, is here. Tri-C West has been such a strong support for our Ukrainian community. He's the head of workforce. He's trying to figure out how to continue to make sure people have jobs. We could go table to table. People are here. I'm just going to leave with a quote of our founder, Mr. Albert Ratner. He founded our organization, and he taught me this. And his mom from Poland said this to him when he was a little boy. And the prayer that she used to say to him before he went to sleep goes like this: they drew a line to keep me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and brought them in.
Yeah, in conclusion, I would also like to express our gratitude to the mayor of Parma and the city council for all of their work, their commitment to the Ukrainian village here in Parma, for collaborating with us, for being the voice, for standing with us and standing with Ukraine. Thank you very much. Дякую.
Thank you very much, panel members, for that insightful discussion and all the information that you shared. I think we heard from our first panel and then definitely here, it is the connections that need to be made, which of course is where we're going to be moving right into the networking and making sure that you are making those connections so that you all know who to reach into and to stay connected so that we all can be prepared and as ready as possible. So thank you very much, Bach, Marta, and Joe. Appreciate all that you've done. And I think I'm turning it over now to Director.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists and presenters this afternoon. I think, I hope that you all, as I, challenged, inspired, and have a lot of things to do. As I was sitting there, I was reminded of the end of a children's book that my wife and I have for our kids that ends with, "There's work to do just for you here and now." And that seems very much appropriate, not just for my 4- and 5-year-olds, but for all of us in this room and in our state as well. I want to thank everyone for being here today, especially our very gracious hosts from St. Vladimir's Church, Father John and Father Michael, and for your team who so graciously opened their doors. Thank you, Governor DeWine, for asking us to host this meeting and for giving us the vision to pull people together and network across not only this region, but the state on this important topic. We've mentioned a number of elected officials, but also want to welcome and recognize several members of the General Assembly, Representatives Crossman, Romer, and Kent Smith, as well as Senators Hoagland and Antonio, who are also here. A number of them have reached out to our office to have conversations about what the General Assembly can do, and as has been noted, there's opportunities for advocacy there as well. So as a reminder, please use those note cards to ask questions. Leave them on the table here as you exit in a little bit, or at the front. And please make sure that you utilize these remaining moments together to network, exchange cards, email addresses, meet new folks, make new connections. And as I said at the beginning, how we further strengthen the safety net, so to speak, for new neighbors who are here and who will be coming. Thanks very much. Thanks for your commitment, and look forward to working with you.
you.